Companies are always updating their image to keep up with the times or just because they feel like it's time for a change. With this, we see logos, slogans, and mascots modified, with the latter of the group being the topic of this video. Which redesigns of famous product mascots were notable for well-known companies, and to go even further, impactful on pop culture. I'm going to discuss the changes to product mascots that caused most heads to turn and ultimately change the image of the company for better or for worse. So by top 10, I mean ones that were noteworthy in the short and long term of a company and would not be overlooked by the public if these companies just decided to revert back to the old design. Another note is the changes can only be made to product mascot designs and not be a full-on replacement to the product mascot that already existed, erasing the older mascot from existence, like how Waldo the Wizard was replaced by Lucky the Leprechaun for Lucky Charms. So let's get into the top 10 product mascot redesigns. Number 10. The KoolAid Man. Usually with an iconic mascot, which is the category the KoolAid Man fits under, companies rarely want to make a major change, which is what Kool-Aid felt when they returned to an older design in 2013. That being said, his design has evolved over the years. It's like he was literally adapting to his environment. Initially, he was just a glass pitcher with a face, but realizing he needed to share his drink with society, he sprouted arms and legs. Although these limbs did help him transport himself, that wasn't good enough considering they were body parts that were really perfect for a stick figure rather than a glass pitcher. So after 20 years, he bulked up his arms and legs to a point where they were suitable for his wall-crashing endeavors. It took another 20 years until he put on clothes. Likely for style, since I doubt he just decided he was cold after 40 years in a state of undress. The thing is, his most iconic design was in the 1970s and 80s, accompanied by him yelling, "Oh yeah!" So the Kool-Aid Company decided to go back to his au naturel look, and thus we have a redesign back to an older design in 2013. That in and of itself technically is a redesign. So using the transitive property, the 2013 design is a redesign of the stick figure limb Kool-Aid Man of the 60s. Number 9. Betty Crocker. She seems like a spokesperson, but she was never actually portrayed by an actress. She was a painting combining the likeness of various women. As the designs were updated, different women got a chance to pose to be the face of Betty Crocker. She was meant to be an icon relatable to the women of the generation, so it makes sense why Betty Crocker was updated on a near-decade basis. However, 1996 was the last time she saw a major appearance change, so I guess the company was happy enough with the image that graces the boxes. Well, okay, she doesn't actually grace the boxes, the spoon does, but she's technically Betty Crocker. She was named after the company, or the company was named after her. It's a bit confusing. Number 8. The Morton Salt Girl. She never really received a major redesign, but minor changes were made at some point to her in every decade from her induction in 1914 to the 1960s. After that, she had basically stayed the same with no real update until her 100th birthday, where she was the same drawing but redrawn to look more HD. The initial design looked a bit younger than the current design, and it appeared her outfit reflected each decade while aging her a bit to make it feel like Morton's brand was growing with the customer. That may sound like a bit of hyperbole, but if you look at Morton's tribute ad for the 100th anniversary of their mascot, they pride themselves on growing with the consumer, being that product that is always there in the home of the customer throughout their life. So the idea that the Morton Salt Girl grew up with each redesign is on par with their mission. It's hard to imagine how heartfelt a brand that only sells containers of salt can be, though. Number 7. Miss Chiquita. When she was introduced in the 1940s, she was a banana with various human features, namely the face, arms, and legs, with a flesh-tone color. In 1987, she was reimagined as a human with a hat full of fruit, as she appears on the logo put on stickers across all Chiquita products. I like the human version better since I've never been a fan of having a food product mascot being the living version of that food. It makes me feel bad for eating the food since it was just speaking so politely to me a second ago. Well, in the case of Chiquita bananas, singing instead of speaking, but my point still stands. That's actually kind of more disturbing since the banana woman is singing about the right time to eat bananas by identifying when the banana is properly ripe, so this banana was promoting the consumption of possibly her own family. Makes you think, huh? Number 6. Grimace from McDonald's. McDonald's has always had a plethora of mascots. Most of them had to do with food. The ones that didn't sort of had to do with food at one point, but we forgot why they were there and just accepted their existence into McDonald land. However, the most mysterious of basically defunct McDonald's mascots is Grimace. He was a large purple unspecified blob that kinda sounded like Patrick from SpongeBob. Growing up, I always thought he was a giant purple chicken nugget that gained life through science gone wrong. However, the real Grimace used to be evil, from a McDonald's perspective. As in, he stole milkshakes and only milkshakes. But he had a malevolent extra pair of arms, ooh. After one ad, McDonald's found him to be too antagonistic, so they just made him Ronald McDonald's friend and removed the extra pair of arms since that apparently made him look more friendly or less antagonistic. One of the two. And even when he was evil, there was no explanation on what he was, so the world will probably never know. Not that they really care to know. Number 5. Larry the Quaker Oats Guy. This was a very subtle redesign. At a quick glance, you'd think nothing is different. He looks like the same guy who has been gracing the box for over 100 years. However, if you observe closely, you'll see he lost some weight, losing some of his facial fat and having brighter skin. Quaker acknowledged this as Larry getting in shape by eating more oats and using oatmeal masks on his face. The point is, Quaker realized that their mascot should look like he eats what he advertises and gets the physical results of his hard, healthy product. He doesn't look like the type of guy that goes to the gym though, but I like to imagine he runs on a treadmill while wearing his traditional outfit. Number 4. The Michelin Man. As time went on, the Michelin Man looked less like tires and more like a delicious pile of marshmallow fluff, but that helped him look like a more universally welcoming character, rather than a creative project you would not want to meet in a dark room for the first time at 3 a.m. I discussed him in a previous video, calling him creepy when he was first made since his creator, while inventive, made his face a bit too emotionless. He was just given a pair of glasses for a face with a jaw that would just sort of unhinge. In the 1930s, Michelin made a short animation about how he was created, where he had a more human-looking face and traveled to space. This face was slowly being added to the advertisements before the cartoon, but it shows the company understood when drawing the mascot, it did not have to translate to exactly how he would be constructed in reality. His eyes were still pretty lifeless though. The main reason there was so much variation among Michelin ads was because the company employed outside artists to give their own interpretation of the mascot. As time went on and Michelin established a consistent look, he took on the appearance we know today as a softer looking pile of whipped cream running away from low tire pressure. Overall, despite his deviation away from the more evident tire-based body, his modern design still stays true to his roots and makes him a good mascot. Number 3. Chuck E. Cheese. Chuck E. Cheese the Mouse has always been known for being a cool dude, which is evident with his purple attire of a backwards hat and skateboarding gear. Of course, that in and of itself was a redesign since apparently kids don't think bowler derby hats are cool anymore. However, as time goes on, what kids in one generation consider cool may be lame to modern children. So Chuck E. Cheese turned their mouse into a rock star voiced by a guy from Bowling for Soup, dumping the old voice actor Duncan Brannon, who voiced characters like Barney the dinosaur and Bogie. So you can see how the voice actor's history reflects the attitude of the different iterations of the mouse. However, getting a singer from Bowling for Soup in 2012 as your new hip voice is not what I would call up to date. The other significant change the mouse saw was actually being made mouse size, which makes him less disturbing since the idea of a human-sized mouse is not something I like to think about, especially in an eating establishment. Number 2. The Brawny Man. When Brawny paper towels first appeared in 1974, the idea behind the Brawny Man is that he is supposed to be the dream guy, who also might be a lumberjack, or at least that's what I've speculated since he's always standing in front of trees, and he loves flannel in a manner similar to Paul Bunyan. The reason he's the mascot is because the paper towel is supposed to be strong like this burly fellow. His original look was fitting for the time, ruffled hair and of course that mustache. He was like the manliest of celebrities in the 70s and 80s, like Burt Reynolds or Magnum P.I. As time went on though, the Brawny Man's style stayed the same, sometimes with a change of clothing but nothing too noticeable. He did eventually don a denim-covered outfit in 2000, but someone should have told him he was about 10 years late on that style. Brawny also decided his look was too outdated, so they hired an ad agency to turn him into a modern male hunk by surveying which physical male qualities ladies found most attractive, since their research showed that 80% of people purchasing Brawny paper towels were women. Knowing this information, Brawny gave him a shave, chiseled his face, and just opted for the plastic surgery to re-Brawnify the Brawny Man. Advertisements acknowledged that this man was more sensitive and caring rather than the gruff and rugged personality he may have exuded before, so they revamped his personality as well, which you can't really tell by looking at the packaging, but it was worth a note anyway. Number 1. A design from the beginning of the 20th century that did not see a notable change until 2010. Mr. Peanut. Since his creation in the early 1900s, outside of some style changes to his face and peanut design, he has always had the same accessories: top hat, cane, monocle, gloves, and shoes. So whenever he was redesigned, the key pieces of his appearance were always there and nothing new was added. However, 2010 was a revolutionary year for planters, since they basically gave Mr. Peanut a suit without pants. They even made him classier if you only go by clothing. But more than just his outfit changed. He was given more texture and now animated in CG. He was also given a more active role in the commercials, receiving speaking roles, a revamped personality, and being the focal point of the ad, rather than just being the iconic Peanut Man that sits on the logo as other spokespeople talk about the product. This new Mr. Peanut even has a peanut posse that gives him more room for salty shenanigans. What made this change even more notable is Mr. Peanut's design from 1962 until the big redesign was basically this cartoon version of him that only got minor color updates here and there throughout the years. Despite the numerous changes to Mr. Peanut before his consistent design change in the 1960s, Mr. Peanut remained the same for nearly 50 years. New Mr. Peanut has personality and really keeps up with the times without forcing it, even giving a TED Talk in a commercial. Bill Hader is the current voice of the mascot, and he really brings him to life. While I do like the old Mr. Peanut, I could not imagine him talking. He just seems like he'd stand there smiling and utilizing hand gestures for communication. So by winning me over from an iconic mascot with a new design, Mr. Peanut is my top mascot redesign, which is hard because I hate change. So, what are your thoughts? Did I miss any good product mascot redesigns from over the years? Let me know. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.